September 29th, 2025. The day Electronic Arts died forever. You may think this too dramatic or far too late of a proclamation, but wherever you lie on that spectrum, I can tell you one thing. This is not good. If you're not sure what I'm referring to, let me explain what went down, how it affects you, the consumer, and why it's probably not going to be a good thing. On September 28th, 2025, it was officially announced by Electronic Arts, or EA as we like to refer to them as, that they were purchased for $55 billion by the Saudi Public Investment Fund, Silver Lake Private Equity, and Affinity Partners. Now, if you're not too familiar with what private equity is, I will explain that in a second, but I do want to also point out the parties involved in the purchase of Electronic Arts. The Saudi Public Investment Fund is essentially an arm of the Saudi government. They use their money that they get from oil to, quote unquote, diversify their portfolio as a government. You can read into that whatever you will. Some people have opinions. Others don't think too much of it. I'll let you decide. Silver Lake Private Equity is an equity firm that has their hands in a lot of different pies. They're not too special. Now, Affinity Partners is an interesting one in this deal. It was formed in 2021 by Jared Kushner. If you don't know who Jared Kushner is, well, he is the son-in-law of President Donald Trump. Again, I will let you read into that. It's just interesting that these three parties came together to make this acquisition. Now that we got through the who's who of the deal, let me explain to you essentially what private equity is. So it's the investment of capital into companies that are not publicly traded on a stock exchange. Their aim is to improve value over years and then eventually sell them for a profit. Typically, private equity firm pools money from high net worth individuals and other investors. In this case, it was three private equity funds that came together to make the deal. The key here is that EA Sports was a previously publicly traded company. So what they did was they essentially bought all of the stocks available and took them off of market. So now they are a privately owned company. What does being private mean? It essentially means they have nobody to answer to. There's no board of directors, there's no shareholders, there's nobody else that they need to accommodate to other than the owners of the actual company, the private equity firms. What do private equity firms do? Well, I already kind of explained it a little bit, but they are there to turn a profit by any means necessary. Most private equity firms are in it to flip companies essentially and make more money than what they bought them for. This group is interesting because you've already bought it for $55 billion. How much more can you feasibly sell it for? What would Electronic Arts have to do in order for it to be worth substantially more than $55 billion? That is my only hang up of what their end goal in this is, why they did it, other than to, again, quote unquote, diversify their portfolio. Maybe they are in it for the long haul. But we've seen a lot of private equity firms, the majority of them come in, break companies down to parts, and then sell them off. You know, get that increased profit margin as much as possible, because that's really the only reason that they're there. Their motivations are unclear, and it scares me a little bit, maybe a lot of it. You'd actually be surprised by how many of your favorite brands are owned by private equity places. Some examples in the real world: TGI Fridays, Red Lobster, Jersey Mike's was recently acquired by a private equity firm, Forever 21, Joann Fabric. Now, why do I bring up most of those? Well, it's because they all went bankrupt. Private equity firms have a knack for being super short-sighted. They are really only focused on quarterly profits. That next quarter, they need to be in the black. They cannot afford to be in the red, because if they do, it means they're losing money on their investment, and they can't have that happen. What we see is a decrease in quality of the product. The company comes in, they lay a bunch of people off to try and increase profit margins on day one, but then they also want to ramp up production. This causes a strain on current work staff, and it forces people to quit, and then the company starts to fall, and eventually they file for bankruptcy. In 2025 alone, there have been $10 billion bankruptcies. 7 of them have been backed by private equity. That's not to say that all private equity is bad. It's just painting a picture of what private equity exists to do and how it affects the staff, and subsequently the consumer. So we've never seen anything quite like this in the gaming industry. There's only some comparable things that have happened acquisition-wise, and to be honest with you, I don't even know if they really are that comparable. Most recently, Microsoft bought Activision Blizzard. Obviously, Microsoft itself is not a gaming company, but they do have a gaming division. They've already established developers like Bethesda, so they bring in Activision Blizzard. What we saw recently, though, was that they laid off 9.5% of their staff earlier this year. The price for Game Pass went up. The selection for more games in the Game Pass under Activision Games has increased slightly, but not to the extent that a lot of consumers were hoping. They did also move more games to PS5, Nintendo Switch, and other things like that. So there have been some pros, there have been some cons. But this move from EA is different. Microsoft, like I already said, had a gaming division in place. They were just adding to it, but they had the structure there. The Saudi Public Investment Fund does not, nor does Silver Lake or Affinity. This is truly a realm that they're stepping in that they don't understand. And that's what scares me the most. I don't know what their plan is for leadership roles, for decisions. Are they going to be solely profit-minded? Because based off the outside looking in, that's what it feels like. So it's the perception is, right? Otherwise, why would they be buying this company other than, quote unquote, diversify their portfolio? So we've never seen private equity in the video game industry like this. There's a reason why. Because to be honest with you, it's not a great investment to get into one of these companies. They're already super understaffed. They've set deadlines that they cannot hit. They're hemorrhaging money at the seams. If you were an investment company, this would essentially be burning money for you. There's not a good reason to do it, except with a company like Electronic Arts. They might be the only company that a private equity firm would buy. When it comes to investment in the gaming industry, it's so risky because of the development cycle of a lot of AAA games. They are hell to make. They take years upon years to establish a foundation and then build all the tiny blocks on top of that to make a game that the consumers are going to like. Because if you keep making a crappy product, eventually consumers are just not going to buy it. And we're starting to see that in the industry. What Electronic Arts has, though, is kind of a shield, and it's with
EA Sports. It's in the game.
It is a massive, massive division of Electronic Arts. They have NHL. They have FC, formerly known as FIFA. They have Madden, college football, F1, UFC, the mobile FIFA, Madden, and NBA Live games. Of that selection, UFC is the only one that doesn't come out yearly. When you add that library of sports games to Battlefield, Wild Hearts, Immortals, Star Wars series, Battlefront, and The Jedi, Mass Effect, Dragon Age, Need for Speed, you can't forget The Sims, that is a lineup of yearly releases and those cyclical AAA games that will make you a lot of money. When you break it down like that, EA is essentially the perfect company for private equity. They have those yearly releases that will help keep that bottom line healthy while also having those group of non-yearly series that have a massive following that will get those buys when they do start rolling those games out. People are going to flock to them. And like I said, the gaming industry is not in a great place right now, but this kind of gives you the best of both worlds if you are looking for a company to invest in. Now that we've kind of established what private equity is, why those investors made this move, and why, from a business sense, it could be deemed a good move from them, let's talk about it from a consumer perspective. That is why you are here. That is why this deal is important. I'm going to be completely honest with you. It is tough to get a good gauge on which way this is going to go. And it's really because we don't understand the motivations behind these private equity firms. What I can tell you, though, is that based on the history of private equity firms, probably nothing good is going to happen. If you thought EA was already trying to grab money with their Ultimate Team game modes, with all of the paywall stuff that they've had in their Battlefront games, loot boxes, whatever you've seen in video games from EA, just wait until it is officially private and they start rolling out games under that private equity firm. Because I promise you, you have seen nothing yet. it is going to get infinitely worse. There is no way that the prices do not go up. I honestly would not be surprised to see games start costing $80, $90, or even $100, right? We were at $60 on the old console. Now we're at $70. I'm just preparing you to see these games increase in price, but decrease in quality. We got a little bit of a break in the action, so pause real quick. As I was editing this video, I came across this tweet from Culture Crave. EA's new owners are planning an AI pivot to significantly cut operating costs via the Financial Times. I can't say I'm surprised. If you understand where we're at as a society, this makes complete and total sense. What does this mean for the consumer? Basically everything I've already outlined. This is going to end up horrendously for us. We're going to have awful games that have glitches and bugs, even more so than they have now. They're going to cost more money, and everything is going to go downhill from this point on. This was an awful deal when it happened, and so far, just a few days after it continues to get worse. So that's a quick update. Just wanted to share that with you guys. I'll tell you what, yearly releases are never going away for sports games. I know it's been a big gripe within the sports gaming industry that we want non-yearly releases because the way that they do it, they rush production of the game, and it always releases with bugs. It always releases with poor mechanics. There is nothing that they can fix because they don't have the time to fix it. You can kiss that dream goodbye because that is never, ever happening. They are never going to go to a biannual release because they make too much money off of those. And now they're relying on them to get them through the life cycles and development cycles of the other games. It is so important for them to have that yearly influx of cash from your FIFAs, from your Maddens, from your college footballs, from your NHLs, from your UFCs, your F1s, especially those international games like FC and F1. They sell more throughout the world internationally than your Maddens and NHLs do, obviously because F1 and soccer are more popular internationally than they are here in the US. Profit is the major driver with private equity firms. I don't see how that's going to be any different with this group of companies. You don't make a $55 billion investment if you don't think it's going to pay off at some point. They are going to do everything they can to drive profit. Profit now is going to matter more than anything. Don't be surprised if staff gets laid off to increase profit margin. You pay less people, you're obviously going to make more money, which means there's less people working on the games though, which means the games come out worse than they already are. There is a cycle that seems to happen every single time a private equity firm gets a hold of a company, and it goes the exact same way every time. Now, there may be a silver lining here. In the short term, they may put a lot of money into the development of these games to increase the brand of these Electronic Arts games. But I can promise you at some point, with probably in the next 4 to 5 years, you will notice a drastic difference in the way that EA is now versus then. And it's not going to be in a positive way, which is crazy to say because how much worse can EA possibly get? I mean, we're talking about one of the most hated development studios in the gaming industry. It might be the most, if we're being honest. The way that they money grab and nickel and dime you at every single turn. But these companies are so short-sighted when it comes to profit that they never do anything with the actual health of the industry and the game in mind. Like I already talked about, those sports games would do better if they just had biannual releases. But they're not going to do that because it hurts that year's profit margins. If in a year that they don't release the game, they are going to have less sales. They cannot afford that. So they're not going to do it. Here on this channel, I mostly focus on EA College Football. That is the game that I like to play. It is predominantly what my channel is. This is going to affect me. It's going to affect everybody else that plays college football. It's going to affect everybody that plays Battlefront. It's going to affect everybody that plays The Sims. This is not going to affect just one group in the video game sector. Every single corner of the video game industry, every video game genre is going to be touched by this because of that library we talked about that EA has access to. And if this works, if the Saudi Public Investment Fund and Silver Lake and Affinity see their valuation go up, regardless of how we feel from a consumer perspective, more private equity firms are going to get into video games. And that is not a world I want to live in. I didn't want to go all doomsday, all fear-mongering and whatnot about this deal, but I cannot help but have a bad feeling about what this means for the video game industry. To me, this signifies the beginning of the end of the video game industry as we know it. That is all I have for you today. Let me know in the comment section below what you think of this deal. Give me your thoughts. Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? What camp do you fall on? I'd love to hear from you guys to get a different perspective and see if I'm just a little too far on the doom and gloom end, or if I share a sentiment that is shared by everybody else. While you're down there, if you wouldn't mind hitting that subscribe button, giving this video a like, both of those things immensely help my channel, and I would greatly, greatly appreciate it. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Catch you on the flip. See ya.